WWE uses a lot of tricks and secrets to create their iconic moments, like when Kane locked The Undertaker inside of a casket and set it on fire. Those flames were real, so how did The Undertaker escape and survive? Well, after being chokeslammed and having the lid shut, Undertaker escaped through a secret door. At the bottom of the casket, there's a section of padding that can be pushed out. Since the casket was right next to the ring, The Undertaker simply pushed the padding out and crawled under the ring. Kane and Paul Bearer intentionally blocked the view so that no one could see Undertaker escaping the casket. 18 years later, The Undertaker avoided another near-death incident when Shane McMahon jumped from the top of the Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania 32. We saw how the dead man survived, but how did Shane avoid killing himself? Well, there's actually an airbag hidden underneath the announcer's table. You can see the bag deflating after McMahon hits the floor. This moment still had to hurt, but at least there was some cushioning. You might not believe this, but the entire thing is a lie. Sort of. That is not milk that Kurt Angle is spraying everyone with. Since, while the milk that came out of the hose was not real, the milk Kurt Angle drank at the end was, which created a problem. The milk stained Angle's shoes, and when he flew on a plane the next day, he smelled awful. There's only ever been 5 buried alive matches in WWE history, but when they do happen, it's pretty special. A wrestler wins when they bury their opponent inside a grave. No wrestler has ever actually died because of this match, so what's the secret? The first trick is that the grave is always built on what's supposed to look like a hill. This is what allows the grave to be very deep. Speaking of which, while the sides of the grave look like dirt, they're actually just fabric. When the wrestler falls into the grave, he'll pull back the fabric and go inside a small hidden room built into the side of the grave. The wrestler's opponent will usually do something dramatic to give the wrestler who's getting buried enough time to get into the hidden room before the dirt fills the grave. The room is just big enough for the wrestler to stand up and move around in. This is how The Undertaker was able to have his hand rise from the ground after the first Buried Alive match in 1996. That's how WWE does a Buried Alive match, but what about when Paul Bearer was buried alive under concrete? You might be surprised, but that was mostly real concrete. However, there was some oatmeal mixed in to give it texture. How WWE pulled off the stunt was, before the show started and before fans were at the arena, WWE filmed Paul Bearer sitting in the tank as they filmed it. Then, during the broadcast, WWE would play these pre-recorded clips to make it look like Paul Bearer was there live and the tank was getting filled. Now, during the actual show, there was someone in the tank, but that was a professional stunt person who was pretending to be Paul Bearer. In order to make it believable, the camera crew had to avoid showing a clear shot of the tank, since fans would have been able to tell that Paul Bearer wasn't actually in there. Okay, this one may not be an iconic moment, but it was memorable. On Raw, Triple H attacked Stone Cold Steve Austin backstage. It was actually a pretty stupid move, as Stone Cold not only got the upper hand, but he locked Triple H in a room with a rattlesnake. That was a real rattlesnake that Triple H was next to in both the game and the rattlesnake safe. One of the most shocking and infamous moments in WWE history is when Vince McMahon's limo blew up with him inside of it. As you might guess, WWE pulled the stunt off by pre-recording the explosion. But do you know exactly when the moment goes from live to pre-recorded footage? It happens right after the camera changes from behind Vince McMahon to a wide angle of him entering the limo. WWE did a pretty good job, but you can see in the live shot that there are 2 trailers behind the fence and only one when the limo explodes. Also, the fence changes a bit between the 2 angles, and there's also a tree that wasn't there before. Now, to perform the stunt safely, after McMahon entered the limo, the camera stayed completely still. McMahon then left the vehicle, and once everyone was safe, the explosions went off. WWE cut the footage so it looked like the explosion happened as soon as Vince shut the door. Something else worth mentioning is that for a single frame, you can see part of the device where the explosion came from. One of WWE's most disturbing moments was when Diesel saw himself inside a casket. Whoever's inside looks exactly like Diesel, so how did WWE make it look so real? That is actually the real Diesel or Kevin Nash inside the casket. Raw did not air live at this time, so before or after the show, WWE filmed shots of Diesel actually in the casket and edited them in. The shots were tight enough so that you couldn't tell that they were filmed at a different time. Now we also see shots with both Diesel and his body in the casket. For that, WWE had a dummy that they dressed up to look like Diesel, and since the camera was far enough away, fans couldn't tell. Things have changed though, and fans are starting to expose WWE secrets, like how Roman Reigns made himself bleed. To see that, watch the video on screen.